We are rolling.
Oh, we're rolling.
Welcome back to the Jungle Brothers podcast.
Welcome, guys. Part 2 of our exploration into nutrition.
Last week, which I was absent.
Yeah, Paulie wasn't here.
Can we review what you guys went over for myself and the listeners,
Yeah, sure. So it was Tiora and I,
if any?
and we kind of tried to, I guess, go over the key kind of nutritional approaches that are pretty trendy right now, which is, we realised, a fucking quagmire of information. So we covered a few different ideas, and when I say it's not covering all of them, but we touched on the paleo approach, the keto approach. What else did we cover? We covered intermittent fasting and a few different methods of that, and that was kind of it.
Out of those three, what was the finding, or what did you guys come to any conclusions or anything? Or how could you summarize paleo?
Well,
For those who are coming in, maybe they didn't listen to the first one.
yeah, if you're coming in fresh, definitely go back and have a quick listen to that. But the paleo thing, we're just talking about the popular approach of trying to follow what people believe was a diet that the caveman used to eat, which was essentially free of grains, and it was high in animal proteins, reasonably high in fat, and high in vegetables. It kind of, in its modern form, ends up being reasonably low in carbohydrate. Not that that's necessarily a tenet of the diet. So that was the paleo thing, and then the keto thing was really more around eating a large, like the largest portion of your daily calories from fats. So it's a really diet high in fat and very low in carbohydrate and moderate in protein. And then the intermittent fasting thing, which I think that was really cool. I think that's kind of one of the most important elements of a healthy diet is just including times where you're allowing your digestive system to rest. So you're not eating constantly all the time.
Yeah. And out of those three, what was say the rating? Like, do we not like?
They're all a bunch of fucking fads.
Oh. Tiara's back.
Bro.
Tell us more about that.
Fads.
Where
12-week challenges. It's all the same shit.
So it was thumb downs, three thumb
We'll
downs.
get back on the carbs.
He's got a point, eh? Everyone comes around eventually. Look, the takeaway was that there was no takeaway. It's like not one of them is better than the other. They are all just an approach, and an approach is an individual thing. So what we encouraged was that the big takeaway was people should start playing with this stuff for themselves, educating themselves on it. Listen to this, go read a book, go listen to another podcast, find out more about the different approaches, and then start to fuck with it, because you've got your whole life to research it on yourself, right? I do think that there's a couple of big factors missing from both of those, which we'll go into a little bit more in this episode. I'm not really a fan of paleo or keto as such. I do like the idea of intermittent fasting. It's not something I'm doing right now, but yeah, we can touch on it. And I think fasting is an important factor for people to consider.
Cool. And where should we take this conversation today? Is there any more big fads that you want to check off?
No, I think it would be good to talk about where we sit on food. Not literally sit on it, but where our ethos lies on how that our diets fit into our training routines, and where that sits in our vitality and in our health and all that kind of stuff. So
I'll tell you where it sits for me. Everything in the world exists in between meals. Everything's just.
who do you think eats
time
the most?
whiling
He's
away.
the youngest.
Out of us?
He's the youngest of 8.
You definitely eat the most out of the three
Do
of
I?
us.
I think he suffers
so.
from the most amount of food scarcity complex.
You think eats
Paul-
the most amount of shit?
Paul's got a famous byline, which is, I could eat. So you'll say to Paul,
this
like,
is the
hey,
po-
man, I'm going to go get some breakfast. And he'll be like, oh, I've already had breakfast, but I could eat.
That's what I'm trying to make the podcast sign-off line, which is, let's get something to eat, or was it? Let's get lunch.
Yeah, let's get lunch.
Joe made an amazing speech. Side note, at my wedding as the best man, which we should get the transcript for and put it in the show notes. It's hilarious. It's a story about my food scarcity complex that I have. It's not really there. I just enjoy it. Breaking bread with friends and family.
Well,
Who
there's
doesn't?
there's a good starting point. Why don't we go talk a bit individually? You come from a family of 8, Fijian Tongan heritage. What you grew up eating and the way that you guys would do food was different to what my family would do. What's maybe how has that shaped how you manage food now? Before what's your overview?
I had a lot of different influences on food, and I had island food growing up, but then also we had a lot of cheap food as well. With a family of 8 and not a great deal of money, it was Pizza Hut all you can eat, specials with the Vienna ice cream or the strawberry cheesecake. We were just talking about it on the weekend. Actually, I bought a cheesecake from Papa's for Mother's Day on the weekend, and I brought it to the lunch. That I brought dessert, and everyone saw the Papa's box and they thought it was the ricotta cheesecake that they're famous for. And they're like, oh, and they opened it and it was a strawberry cheesecake from Papa's, and they all went, oh. And I was like, whoa, how far the Photophilly family have come.
Yeah. Like your kids and shit were disappointed.
No, like Eddie and Sarah and Betty, they were all like, I was like, far out from Raywonga to Sydney. Now they're like turning their nose up on strawberry cheesecake. But, so we grew up eating like stews, curry, chop suey, fish, and the stews and the curries were all cheap meat, I guess I didn't think too much about it now until now. I look back and I realized like how good that food was, the home cooking that we used to get, and I look at a lot of the trends now with the broths and the slow cooking meat, and they're just a very plain meat dish with dark greens in it, and I look back and go, holy crap, that's just everything that I grew up eating at home, which is really cool. I definitely have a taste for that type of food. I love it. I love bones in everything. I had the influence of the film industry, where we all worked in the film industry, and famously crew gets catered for. So I did that for a decade and a half of eating catered food, and it opened my mind up to a lot of Aussie food and all sorts of food. It was like I had no idea.
It's pretty indulgent.
It was indulgent, and I was like, you eat every single thing that's available. But yeah, that was the first time I had curry that didn't have bones in it, and I had no idea what they were like. Having curry, and they had papadums and stuff like that. And I got there, and I was like, "What is this? This is like stew or something." So it wasn't chili. There was no yellow curry powder, because that's how I kind of grew up eating yellow curry powder curry. But there was no bones. So I'm used to that taste. I'm used to ripping meat off every piece of bone there is and sucking it and sucking everything out of the shells. And I think that's served me well. I can eat anything. I'm not irked by the smell of something really. We go to Yum Cha, we go to wherever it is. When we've travelled, we eat anything and everything that's there. Like, it's interesting to us. Yeah, and I feel for those who can't enjoy that experience.
Yeah, like the people who are conditioned to just eating muscle meat. Like, if it's not chicken breast or thigh, it's disgusting. Or if it's not steak without fat, it's disgusting.
But there's a lot of good stuff in that, like chomping down the cartilage, sucking out the marrow.
Well, you said it right. This is the turnaround in recent years of like, oh shit, like in the West, we've all started eating, muscle meat only, low fat, whatever, and now all the research is like we should go back to eating offal and other parts of the animal and joint and off the bone, because that's where all the good shit is.
Lamb's fry was a big one at my house.
Ooh.
It was meatballs, bacon, whatever meat that was in this big stew, and yes, lamb's liver. Was it lamb's liver? Liver, whatever.
Fry
it
is brain, isn't it?
No, I think it's liver.
T-bone?
Mum will put it in
lamb's fry?
In flour, and then shallow fry it, and then put it in the big gooey stew.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't do fry. We got a lot of liver.
What was your background on food?
And then there was taro and all the beautiful ground vegetables.
I was pretty spoiled. probably had about 7 women in my family bring me up at one point or another. My mum's got a lot of sisters, and I got a sister of my own, and all of them are awesome cooks.
They are.
And again, it's Polynesian culture, so we took a lot from the islands, but then they would fusion with Asian and stand like your traditional Australian cooking and that kind of stuff. But I've been super spoiled. So, and it's always been fresh. It's always been seasonal. A lot of leafy greens, above ground vegetables, ground roots, and meat. Lots of carb. Used to have lots of pastas when I was growing up. I think, again, like Paul, if you
You reckon that's a secret to why you're fucking jacked?
fuck yeah, bro. It's all about the carbs.
Tiori is the one that eats the least. Here.
It's true.
I eat the most, he eats the least. You never see him eat.
I don't do a lot of eating at work. I do a lot of my eating at breakfast, and then I have a reasonable sized dinner. But yeah, I kind of graze during the day. But yeah, I've always been spoiled with whole foods, and it's always been fresh. And my mum had a really big thing against packeted foods of any kind.
It's cool.
I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't understand it as much, and I always felt a little bit envious of the kids that did get access to that kind of food, and then now
tiny teddies and all that kind of
so
shit.
stoked I didn't go there.
Yeah.
All that junk, the plastic cheeses and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
So I was also well educated in the food that were good for me as well. But I think the carbohydrate thing, when you're a growing boy, especially if your family's on a budget, mum was on a budget, like those fillers could save you a lot of money. Having that pasta, having that potato, having that taro and rice and all these things that you can. I mean, I would always bring home 2 or 3 of my mates, and all of us would be training, and we'd all be running around all day, swimming in the ocean or whatever it was, and then we'd come back to mum's still growing and just feast, and she would always have something there. And I know that a lot of the bulk was always carved up because it was cheap and it filled us. But it worked,
Totally. Yeah.
And I don't feel like it had any adverse effects on my health.
I guess we make a point about the carbs because, you could say that carbs have been pretty not victimized. They've been, what's the word I'm looking for?
Do. Shut down.
Yeah, they've been the bad guy in recent, nutrition
Awakening.
times. And it's a bit of a thing now. It's like there's still the people that are really anti-carb, and then there's a bunch of people like, actually, you know what? If you're training and you need energy, these things can be really good for you. So that's why we make it that point.
People are afraid of them.
And you, Joe?
Man, mine was pretty privileged as well, I'd say. Had probably, more of like a kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say like typical Australian, but I guess like kind of 3 square meals type of deal. We would have stews and things sometimes, curries and things sometimes, but there wasn't like one prevailing method. But there was a lot of pasta, there was a lot of rice. There was kind of like, like every family, but mum had like those key dishes that she would make, cannelloni or lasagna or whatever. So I had a really good exposure to a bunch of different foods. My brother started the saga. He became a vegetarian and then I think a vegan, and he followed that for a few years. And then my sister followed suit. So we just started eating predominantly vegetarian. Yeah, vegetarian. I wouldn't say full-on vegan, but at home for a couple of years. And I kind of didn't really sweat it at the time, but we ate a lot of pasta, a lot of rice, a lot of potato, a lot of lentils, things like that. And really good food too.
Was that when he was a teenager? And you were,
he was. Yeah, I was probably like, I don't know, around 10 years old or maybe a bit older. But yeah, he was finishing school or something like that. And anyway, he sort of set that trend, and we did it for a few years. And then I remember he went to and I'm not having a stab at vegans or vegetarians here, but he went to a Chinese.
You can.
Yeah. All right, motherfuckers. So he went to a Chinese doctor and was basically describing his symptoms. And I think he was like, look, I'm tired. I find it hard to focus. I don't have much energy, blah, blah. And the Chinese doctor said, tell me what you eat. And he said, this is what I eat. And he said, yeah, you need to eat meat. And that was the end of the consult. And then that night, my brother came out of the consult and was like, well, this is what he told me. So that night, I remember we went to a Chinese restaurant and it was like Abe's first time eating meat in years. Abe's my older brother. And I remember he was like a fucking man possessed. We ordered duck, we ordered chicken, he ordered beef. Like, he ordered all these different animals and we ate it all. And then he was like, I feel great again.
25 years later, he's still getting at it like a mad dog.
Oh,
like that first day.
Guy can eat. And the guy can cook, you know. So that was, I guess, my bro and my mum and, and my sister as well, all really good at cooking. And my brother pursued that path for a while professionally. So that passed on a lot to me, which was cool. Gave me an interest in.
You're great with food as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Both of you guys are.
Yeah, I think we've all got a bit of something going on there, more than the average dude. But yeah, so in short, I didn't have any particular beliefs around food, right? When I came into my 20s, I just was eating food and making food. But I didn't have, it was probably only once I started to train and then it was probably CrossFit, where I dabbled in that, and then I got exposed to this paleo idea, and I jumped on that bandwagon because I liked the story attached to it. I thought that the hunter-gatherer thing was cool, and I got to eat a lot of meat, so that was fine.
I've been very meat-centric all of my life. I still am very much. Not sure where that came from. I enjoy meat. Probably eat too much. I've gone through phases where I try to, back it off. Try and introduce fish into the diet. Oh, look, I'm father of two and we're kind of busy at the moment. I wouldn't say I'm currently in an ideal nutritional kind of pattern with life, just with resources and time. At the moment, I kind of eat what I can and we do our best with Tash at uni to prepare food. But, it comes and goes in waves, But the meat thing, I've always eaten a lot of meat. Tash was vegetarian for some time when we were dating in our 20s.
I knew there was something about her. Kidding, Tash, love you.
But she broke after so many years of watching me eat bacon. It was bacon that
fuck, that's really common, isn't it?
And then she just got at it from there. She was like, I feel like a steak. But I brought her back over to the meat side. She's never looked back.
What's your thoughts on eating animals? What do you say you eat a little bit too much, a little bit too meat centric? Tell me more about that.
I guess I feel like I always look at the plate and I notice whether it has meat on it or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
if there's no meat on a dish, I see that. It's very noticeable for me. I'm like, where's the meat type thing? Like I downgrade it as a meal. Like this is not really lunch because there's no meat on it.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. I don't know what that is, but having said that, I've had plenty of vegetarian meals, and I'm continuing to have more. Like I am surrounded by really great cooks, and Tash is a great cook, and her parents are both chefs, and her mum, which we all live together, she makes a lot of vegetarian dishes because Tash was vegetarian in her teens, so they didn't have a great deal of meat in their house. So I love vegetarian dishes, but I guess they got to have a whole bunch of carbs to satisfy me.
T-Bone, what's your thoughts on the meat thing?
I eat it. It's unsustainable for the planet, and I think that's an issue. I would love to be able to start. Well, I've thought about it for a long time now. I haven't done anything about it, but I would love to be able to take more of a backward step on meat in general. It's a hard thing being a dad, knowing that I was brought up on meat, and I feel like it played a role in making me strong. And to be able to step away from that concept and take almost like a risk with my own kids and say, all right, well, meat's off the menu kind of thing. I'm not sure if I would be courageous enough to take that step. I'd have to do a lot of research before I felt comfortable with it. So in the meantime, I like to choose meat that's not that's a little bit more on the sustainable side and the cleaner side, and just eat a little less of it. Not be so dependent on meat as my only source of protein, and also the quantity in a meal doesn't have to make up the biggest ratio.
Yeah,
I'm not into eating like a whole fucking steak or a big lump of lamb. Like I would prefer to have it in a stir fry style where I have a whole bunch of different greens and then the meat's there just to complement it. You know, that for me is a good meal, and then the carbohydrates to be a good, 40% kind of thing of that ratio. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of share the same opinion. I do believe that we thrive on it, and I believe that we evolved the way we have because we had access to it. So it's responsible for putting us here now, as was hunting the animals and all those things. That's, been such a part of our evolutionary past. But there's now so many of us on the planet that it is unsustainable. So it's a tough thing to reconcile. So I feel your plight there, because you recognise that what's good for the individual is not necessarily good for the collective. But, you've only got your life, right? So where do you choose to go? So I kind of have that same thing in my mind where it's like, yeah, I want to do something about that, but I don't want to do it bad enough yet.
So where do we stand?
Okay. So yeah, look, it's interesting because when you get people coming to the gym or coming to get coached by you, nutrition and diet invariably becomes a part of that process of getting fitter and stronger and, building muscle, getting rid of fat, whatever. And it's important because the environment we live in can trip you up at every turn, and it's easy to make the wrong decisions and mistakes there. So we've had to try and as you can tell, we got three different upbringings, 3 different backgrounds, not hugely different in what we ate, but, variance. So we've tried to kind of summarize it in a way that we can pass on to people in a way that the Jungle Brothers feels about food and its role in our lives. So we came up with sort of 4 key points on truths when it comes to eating well, and we believe these are regardless of what your particular stance is ethically or environmentally. So if you're a vegan, if you're a keto individual, whatever you are, you can I'm sure you could agree with these. The first is eat real food. The second is be mindful of where that food comes from. The third is to avoid stuff that comes in packets. And the fourth is to be prepared. So what are we talking about when we say eat real food?
We're talking about whole foods, stuff that you could recognise. And I think an easy way to put it is just something that's not in a packet, not processed.
Yeah, I agree. Mindful of where it comes from.
Yeah, so I think it's really important to understand even the process of whole foods. Like, you pick up a piece of fruit from Woolies and you look at it and you go, okay, so maybe you're getting like a summer fruit in the middle of winter, and you're like, all right, well, where has this come from? Is it sat on a boat for a month or something in a crate, and then or freeze dried or whatever process they put it through to keep it from going off? Is it like grown in some really kind of artificial monocultural way with a bunch of pesticides and heavy fertilizers and that kind of stuff? Or is it something that's seasonal, that's been grown close to you, hasn't traveled a lot of distance, and maybe it's got some kind of heritage, some kind of, it's a, what's the word? gotten a mind blank.
Genetic modification.
No, like a different heirloom variety of fruit or veg.
Ah, yeah.
So you're not looking at your standard kind of.
Is it a hybrid or a?
Yeah. Is it something that
Yeah.
that's not your standard run of the mill fruit or veg? Is it something you've grown in your own backyard? You know, is it meat that has been living in a pen and never seen the light of day, or has it run around on a field and eaten grass, or has it been fed soy and corn its whole life, or you know, these are the questions you got to ask yourself. Has it lived in a cage its whole life? You know, and a lot of people might question that and think, well, you know, cow's a cow, but at the end of the day, you are what you eat, and this applies to the animal as well. So if your animal has think about the health of a human. If it only ate one thing its whole life, it would be in terrible health. And because of that, it would need lots of medication, lots of hormonal regulation, and
Be knocking on death's door.
yeah, and that's pretty much what you're eating if you're taking on a sick or ill animal. And I mean, you see this stuff floating around the internet all the time, and some of the conditions of these animals, you just think it's heinous. And you think, all right, well, if you were to walk into one of these places, kill that animal, and then cook it up, you'd probably vomit before you even got it to your mouth. But because we're so detached from that process, it's very easy to think, okay, it's pig's a pig.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's not.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to liken it to if you had to eat a person, who would you eat?
Yeah.
Would you go and pick some junkie dude that's hanging around on the street that's, you know, obviously not in great health, or are you going to try and pick someone that's lived a clean, happy life, moving plenty, getting lots of sun?
Wow, that's a great way to think of it.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, right? But it's like, fuck, if you had to, definitely going to take the healthy person. And it's
I'd
the
eat tea.
same shit with animals. We just find it harder to identify. Yeah, I'd probably eat tea. I'd eat his face. So then third is to avoid stuff in packets. And that kind of ties into the first point. But really, it's just like, if you go shopping and you see, you know, all the fun shit's in packets, right? Biscuits and lollies and, you know, I don't know, whatever fucking people buy, Pop-Tarts and stuff. There's, you know, that's where all the modern manufactured stuff lives. And some of that is okay sometimes. We don't want to deny the time that we're living in and what technology can bring to us. But really, the bulk of what we're eating should be coming from, you know, animal proteins, or it should be coming from the ground, fruit and vegetables, and those things don't really live in packets. And I would go as far to say that, you know, like when you get, I'm sure when you guys go shopping and you buy vegetables, you stop when, like, say you're buying some zucchinis and they've got like loose zucchinis sitting there, or then they've got like 4 zucchinis wrapped up in a polystyrene tray wrapped in plastic. And you're like, well, I'm not going to buy the fucking one wrapped in plastic just because it doesn't need to be. Even that, I find a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, oh, that's convenient. I'll grab the 4, you know? And it's like, why did you do that? Like, did you not think that the plastic is bad, the polystyrene is bad, and it's all just unnecessary?
And they've probably put something in there that's on its way out anyway, or not of good quality. So you can't even inspect the whole piece.
That's what they're doing there, yeah? So you can't handle it?
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
Of course it is.
And to make it convenient for people to pick up 4 instead of 2?
I think there's probably a bit of a premium charge too, because it's because it's a convenience option. It appeals to our modern kind of, you know, fucked up way of looking at things. But that, like, from that simple question of, oh, is this real food? Where did it come from? If you ask yourself that, you make the decision not to buy that thing wrapped in plastic. But if you're oblivious to that, you buy the thing wrapped in plastic. It's easy. You can put it in your fridge. You don't have to fucking worry about it, right? It'll probably stay fresh for another 6 weeks. And the third one, or the fourth one rather, is be prepared. Talk to me about that. That's big.
Biggest one ever. And that's just about being able to cook for yourself, prepare your own meals, and be thinking ahead of time when you do it.
Which is very complicated. It can be very complicated.
Yeah, it's a discipline.
That's right.
It's a fucking discipline,
You
and
have to
people
design
overlook that. You know.
Yeah, it's. You want to go?
Oh no, I was just going to say I find it. yeah, if you want to be able to see that point through, depending on your living situation, like it's different. You need to get all the people around you on board. Like if you're in a family, it's hard to do it alone. You need to do it all together as a family because the shopping needs to happen together. There's scheduling involved. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't have kids, but with my partner Nikki, it's the same deal.
Not yet. It's only a matter of time.
Back off, bro. I'll bite your face. But yeah, like you said, like it has to be like, oh, cool. What do you want to eat? Okay, who's going to make what? What are we eating tomorrow night? Like, or not lock it in, but have an idea, right?
Yeah.
It's funny. I think I was thinking the other day about a cool business idea, and I know this kind of exists in some form out there, but it's like if you look at, and I'm going to generalize and say, let's say people. I was tending to think that it's mostly guys, but I think it happens to girls now as well. But you get these young people go up through their teenage years, get into their 20s. I mean, I noticed this with a bunch of my friends, but they start living by themselves and they got no fucking idea how to cook. They got no fucking idea how to shop. They don't really know anything about food, and they definitely don't know how to prepare it. So they come up with a couple of basic meals like, spaghetti bolognese or, barbecued sausages or whatever it is. But that's what they stick to. And then it's like they hopefully meet a partner that knows something about food, and then that partner can just be the person that cooks in that relationship. Usually for guys, it's, they're hoping that their wife is going to fulfill that role. But the problem is like in those formative the formative years have happened way before that, but in those years where you're out on your own doing it, that's where you're setting up like your lifetime approach to food and your relationship with it. So chances are if you don't know about it and you don't know how to do it, you're going to eat shit and you're going to be in bad health. And then you're going to pass that on, and then you're going to have kids, and then they're not going to be eating that great, and it's just going to be this, kind of self-fulfilling sort of thing. So I was like, fuck, it'd be interesting to see some kind of business besides a home delivery company that educates people on how to prepare food. Where it's like you go there as a teenager, and it's like, cool, you're in your last couple of years of school, we're going to teach you how to cook, we're going to give you a bit of education around food so that when you become a real adult, you're not going to be, stuck out in the woods kind of thing.
It should be a government-funded scheme. And, they have, I've forgotten what it's called in high school.
Social science.
Home economics.
Home economics.
Is it home economics?
Yeah.
They teach you to make fucking pavlovas and shit.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's not a fucking nutrient.
That seemed to be like a leftover from the 50s when it was like, what should a housewife make?
That's right.
Like with her Tupperware and stuff. And it was
I don't know if there was any guys in my year that did that subject. Tash did it.
So
I remember.
That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, it didn't fit the bill. I mean, but that's the idea, right, of that program, I guess. But yeah, totally should be part of our education system.
Well, imagine the amount of like load that would take off our healthcare. We talk about this bill that just keeps going up, but if there's preventative steps put in place and happens in other countries, then this is the kind of stuff that starts to pay off for the future generations. Kids need to learn how to cook. I know my kids are 3 and 5. And they're at the stove, and it sounds like a dangerous place to be, but they know what hot is, they know what cold is, and they've learnt through experience. And I think when you do that, and this is a Polynesian thing. The best way to learn what hot is to let your kid touch the fire.
Yeah,
and that's just the way it is, And I think it's the safest way because they're going to do it anyway. They may as well do it in front of you,
Yeah.
So if my kid looks at it like a hot cup of coffee, I don't pull their hand away and say hot. I say, yeah, it's hot, but touch it. Touch it, see what happens. And they'll come in real cautious, and then they'll touch it, and they'll get burnt, and they'll go, oh, it's hot, Daddy. It's like, well, I told you that, but now you know what
hot
the word
means,
hot means.
Yeah.
But, this is the same with...
Fuck, you idiot, you fell for my trick again.
Yeah. With food, like try it, taste it. This is what the meat looks like before we cook it. This is here's the different options we have for vegetables. I have my own veggie patch. So we go out. My daughter and my son will pollinate flowers. We'll watch those flowers turn into vegetables. Pick those vegetables, cut them together, boil them together, eat them together. and they understand the process from start to finish. And this is
So good.
such a fucking life lesson for them, you know. And I know when I'm doing this, I'm instilling that respect for whole foods, where it comes from, and the excitement that you can get from eating healthily, and the creativity you can have from it, and and then the healthy body that comes from it, you know, which is a finished product.
Yeah, when I went to your place last weekend or the weekend before, your kids were dragging me around the garden, showing me the different plants, and that's a strawberry and that's a pineapple, and guess what that is? Which is pretty cool, right? They're really proud of that and interested in that.
Knowledge.
Yeah.
They even watch the bugs that are doing the pollinating if they're not doing it themselves, and they know what the bees are doing. They know what everything in the garden, what purpose it serves. It's awesome. You know?
So good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're really important values. It should really be taught on a global scale. You know.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, we're talking about these kind of main sort of, I guess, guiding truths or tenets behind eating well, and they're separate from particular food dogmas. They're not part of any particular kind of diet. But then, in practicality, how do we see something like veganism working out? And taking, let's look at it from the perspective of someone who comes into the gym, wants to get fit and strong, start training 4 times a week, lifting weights, doing all that kind of thing, fight work. What's your experience there?
Well, we've got a couple in the gym, and they're all fucking strong. I think the vegans cop the most amount of flack when it comes to like special, like strength and power disciplines.
Yeah.
Generally, most people say, if you don't eat meat, you're weak or you're constantly injured.
Pretty sure I heard you say that to them.
Yeah, I say it to them, but I need to shit stir them. But I don't actually
mean it.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And I don't believe it because they prove me wrong time and time again.
That's good coaching.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
response.
But these guys are fucking organised. I know a lot of other vegans that are not,
who aren't.
and they just fucking eat sugar and shit out of packets, and it's like you got it all wrong. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing it for humanity, you're supporting these big companies that are fucking churning out shitloads of pollution and fucking using petroleum-based products to fucking package all their goods and the rest of it. If you're doing it for your health, then you're doing yourself a disservice as well. So I do believe that if you do not have meat in your diet, you have to be even more organised with your food prep, because you can't really eat out either. Everywhere you go, there's fucking meat and everything.
Yeah.
So
you're
going
to have a vegetarian pizza or a vegetarian pasta, right?
Yeah.
Like the options are generally pretty shit for those guys.
Yeah. But these guys are doing it.
It's a good point. I think the big thing there is that if you choose to follow that style of eating, you have to do more work. That's basically what it is. You have to be more prepared. You have to be more educated, because I think most people would agree. Well, actually, no, not all, but it's generally considered that meat is very nourishing. It carries a lot of what our body needs in it, so it's an easy food to be nourished from. If you choose to not eat it, then you have to work a little bit harder to find those same nutrients in other foods, right? And it generally doesn't come from just one thing.
And more quantity of those foods as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Paulie, thoughts? You got any thoughts on?
No, so you mean like they've got to eat more of a vegetable in order to get the same equivalent from a small piece of meat? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it could, more than like to say, and I'm going to fuck this up, but like you might eat a bunch of spinach and get a bunch of, vitamin K, but you're still not going to get the iron necessarily that you would have got from the meat. So then you need to go and chase that from somewhere else. So you have to be smart enough to know what comes from what and what variety of things you need to have to replace that one thing. Because the thing is with meat is that you're essentially eating an animal that's eaten like hundreds of kilograms of plants. So it's absorbed such a huge amount of mineral from those and vitamins from those plants, that you can then just shortcut it by eating the animal.
They also have the digestive system that allows them to process all those nutrients, and humans don't necessarily have the same ability. They have an ability, but they're not. I mean,
They
the
can
cow
eat a
has
lot-
fucking eight stomachs
Yeah.
or some shit. Three stomachs.
Something like that.
So yeah, they're like digest. Then they pick up the grass, chew it again, and swallow it, and chew it again, and swallow it, and you know what I mean. Like a human can't do that. We can't eat grass. You know. So what they process out of that grass, we get instant access to by eating them. And this is what happened when carnivores first arrived on the planet, and it's part of evolution. You know.
Did you guys talk about sugar last?
We
Last
didn't actually.
podcast?
No, we not exclusively.
You know what sugar is?
What is it?
Energy.
Sugar is yeah, but you know where that energy comes from?
Tell us.
The sun?
The sun. It's just solar. It's solar energy
Yeah. Okay.
stored in.
Stored in
Can you
plants.
explain that?
Oh, I guess it's. I know it's something to do with photosynthesis. Like the plant has its leaves out and it absorbs energy from the leaves, and then it stores that sugar in the shape of its trunk. So if the trunk is hard and solid, it's very hard to get to it, and then it'll distribute some of that sugar into a fruit to attract an animal to take its seed and plant it somewhere else. And that's pretty much it. But sugar is solar energy stored, which is pretty amazing when
That's
you think
cool.
about it. And I mean, that's beautiful stuff. Like to think that it has such a bad reputation, but there would be no life on the planet without it. No life at all.
Yeah, it's true, right? Like that's why we like it so much, is because it is so good for us.
We've just abused it.
Yeah, and we just have it available to us now in such abundance. But you think about the natural environment, it would not be easy to come across a large quantity of sugar, right? You're basically not going to do it. You might find a fruit tree, but birds would have eaten the fruits before you got to it, and the fruit wasn't that sweet back in the day anyway. Or maybe you raided a fucking bee's nest, but you got stung by hundreds of bees in order to get the honey. Whereas now we don't have to do any of that, and we can just have it, you know, in all of the packaged foods and drinks and whatnot. So it has become this demon, right? But I think that's taken us away from a little bit from the idea that, well, your cells actually run on it, and it is the cleanest fuel source and the most efficient fuel source you can have. So then the question is, for our people, how do you work with it? What are we looking for there? I mentioned in the last episode the idea of the carbohydrate curve being that the more work you do in training, or just consider it as energy output, then the more carbohydrate you need. So the less work you do, the less carbohydrate you need. I believe that would also be affected by your body fat levels. So if you are carrying quite a bit of body fat, then you probably don't want to be consuming huge amounts of carbohydrate or huge amounts of sugar. But if you're a lean individual, then you definitely need it, because you don't have those reserve fuel sources to call upon in order to get yourself through, the 90 minutes of training you're doing a day or whatever it is. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think any type of energy surplus anywhere becomes waste in a way, and it's got to be dealt with somehow. This is just like a universal rule. So if your body has a surplus, then because we're designed to work in an environment that doesn't have a lot of access to high energy foods, and it recognizes that, it's okay, I'm just going to store this. Store it for a rainy day.
How do you take sugar? You take
Fruit.
chocolate and stuff?
Fruit's good. I eat chocolate, but I don't eat it for energy. I eat it because I like it. So there's an addiction factor to it as well.
Do you justify it like with training days or something like that?
Or
Or you just get it when you can?
No.
Do you
Not
train?
really. No.
Doesn't eat, doesn't train.
You should see me when I do, though. Yeah, no, I train. But no, I like chocolate and I like ice cream, and I know I like it a lot. So it's a reward food for me, and I'm aware that when I eat it, I'm eating it because I'm eating it for the joy of eating it and the emotional response that I get from it. And by being aware of that, I can keep it in check. You know? But I definitely don't go to the ice cream bucket when I'm hungry. That's a downhill spiral right there. When I'm hungry, physically hungry, I go for nutrient-rich food, always.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway there, is to prioritize eating what your body needs, and then if you feel like you want to have some shit on top of that, you can do it. That's an interesting kind of observation I've had working with some individuals on their diet, is that they don't eat what they need. And oftentimes, because they have instincts or compulsions the same as we do, they still eat the shit. They still eat ice cream or whatever.
Still, they're calorie deficient as well.
Yeah, that's the problem. So they're not getting nourishment, and then they're having the shit on top of that. And then when you tell them, okay, check it out, I want you to eat all the good food, plenty of it, and then you can also have a little bit of shit on top of that. They're like, well, this seems like a lot of food, and I'm going to get fat from this. But it actually doesn't necessarily work that way, right? If you are providing the body with what it needs, then that gives you a little bit of leeway to play around on top of that, I believe.
You used to keep 2 blocks of chocolate in your top drawer all the time for a long time. I haven't seen you do that for
at
a
the
long
office
time.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'Cause you eat it all.
yeah,
all
you
the
fucking
time.
guys cost me too much money. Yeah, I'll tell you about that.
what's going on there?
Well, it started. I like chocolate, and I started to get into eating dark chocolate, and so I would have supplies of like 90 or sometimes 100% dark chocolate, and it was my little thing during the day. But I've learned,
If we were lucky enough, he'd offer us some.
yeah, sometimes got to keep these guys on edge, you know. But the couple of things on that. One, I noticed that I'm just eating it because it's there. I don't really need to eat that much chocolate. But two, cacao kind of fucks me up a little bit. I do like it, but if I have very strong cacao, it gets me a little bit jittery and it makes me piss a lot. So I was like, I'm going to try not to eat this steady drip feed of cacao all day, every day. I don't know if you guys have ever found that, but for me, cacao is really, really potent. Yeah, it's a real stimulant, right? So now I don't do it as much. But the interesting thing is too, when I was doing that, I wasn't eating anywhere near as much as I am now. And that's been a bit of a learning for me over the last sort of year, is that I probably should have been eating more in terms of total calories per day than I have been for a long time. So by just eating more food, I've kind of taken away a lot of those cravings because my body's like, feels solid.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been good. Fellas, look, I think we should call it there, but we could easily do like another couple of parts on this. So we'll continue. We'll consider this one to be continued.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Look, just a little call out for our people. We do help our members here at the gym with nutrition stuff. So if any of our people want that, or if anyone wants more information, just come at us. We leave all our address, touch points and shit in the show notes. But I think the big takeaways are you need to become responsible for yourself in that realm. So get educated, learn about it, and start to enjoy the process of it. And then also learn how to cook and make that part of what you do with your family, and become, have a bit of a ceremony around that, because it's a beautiful part of life. The other takeaway is, for me, that there is no one approach, right? There's many. So we can't get too dogmatic about this stuff. We have to have a bit of an ethos around it, and then sort of experiment within what parameters we consider to be acceptable.
Be mindful when you eat. Ask yourself why.
You want to quickly plug the gym?
Fuck yeah. You guys know where we're at. 15 Underwood Avenue, Botany, New South Wales. We're South Sydney. We're doing a bunch of cool shit down here. We're working with all types of people. We're doing a lot of bodyweight strength, flexibility work, weightlifting, grappling, Thai boxing. So, we're open to all. If you're interested, come at us, junglebrothers.com. You can check in with us there and leave a phone number and stuff, and we'll get in touch. And even if you're not near the gym, get in touch, because we do work with some of our online people across the globe. So if you're interested in that, just reach out.
It's 4 p.m. in the afternoon. I know we had lunch just before we started this podcast, but you guys want to grab some lunch?
I could eat.
I could eat. All right. See ya.
Thanks, boys.
Bye.